Flag will wave. And here come the red lights. The revs rise, so does the anticipation. It's 5 lights and out. We're racing in Hungary. It's a great start from George Russell. He doesn't need to cover across from the Ferrari, but watch Lando Norris, who looks like he's up the inside of Charles Leclerc. Now he goes very cautious, and around the outside now comes Carlos Sainz. Can he get it done? George having to go very defensive. Charles Leclerc breaks very late. He goes around the outside, and the grandstands erupt as Charles Leclerc leads here for the first time at the Hungaroring. Charles Leclerc is nursing that car, but he's been so unemotive on the radio. I've been really impressed with his composure. It's been a torrid time for Charles Leclerc, but he's put those wrongs right. It's been difficult. He's going to win the Austrian Grand Prix, though, as he rockets out the final corner. It's Charles Leclerc who wins.
Lining up ninth on the grid is top rookie, and a name you might know, Romain Grosjean, leading the Andretti Autosport charge by a country mile. An impressive performance by the Frenchman. And Max, 2 hours before the start of this iconic race, what's it like to be a driver?
You've touched on 2008 there. I wanted to talk about that because obviously you made the transition to NASCAR, and Jimmy, you've gone the other way. So we'll talk a little bit about how challenging was it to get a roof over your head and go and race on those ovals. It's completely different discipline.
It was pretty challenging, clearly.
And what's it like having Dario in your corner now? He's the coach.
Pretty nice.
What are you focused on now at this stage in your career, and still every bit as good as you've ever been and still progressing?
22 centigrade and perfect conditions here at Spa-Francorchamps, a circuit, of course, located deep in the Ardennes, which is famous for the changeable and unpredictable weather conditions that we've seen so often, and I'm sure we're going to be treated to those if the weather forecast lives true. Green flag waves, so does the national flag, and the runners sprint across to their bike, and the yacht has got away this time, but he's not going to be the quickest down to turn 1. It looks full factory. It is full factory. It's the Team HRC bike that's going to win on home soil here in Suzuka. It's going to be their 28th win overall, by far the most successful manufacturer. Honda ahead of Kawasaki, Suzuki making it 3 different manufacturers in the top 3.
And talking about the trophy, would you take a Indy 500 win over a Monaco win?
That's a tough question. You know, I'm greedy, so I'd like the answer to be both.
But Juan Pablo Montoya chose.
For young people who are wanting to come into doing commentating, what sort of subjects do you think is best for them to, focus on to come into it?
So in terms of academic stuff, or in terms of just the different championships or that kind of thing?
Both, really.
Yeah. So I think from a broadcasting perspective, obviously the way you need to sort of be eloquent to a certain degree, but it's about bringing the sport to life. Your role is to bring your enjoyment and the race and everything else like that to life for everyone at home. And I think, we can focus on being perfect and the wording, but actually it's not about being perfect. It's just about you being the best version of yourself and you bringing it to life. So, I left school at 16. I didn't do A-levels. I didn't do anything in the way of further education like university. So I've worked hard on my vocabulary and the words that I use and how I project those words and put sentences together. So I don't think, I'm a big advocate of it. It might be that school and the academic world is not necessarily your strongest forte. So I don't want to put too much pressure on that. So for me, I know this is a bit of a around the houses answer, but it's about finding your way. It's about what works for you. What do you think is the best route to to try and realize your dream. But there's no two ways about it. Having that sort of spectrum of vocabulary and being able to project yourself and tell the story is important. So whether or not you do that in a classroom with English language, English literature, or you do that in a drama setting with drama and in a sort of creative and practical environment, it's entirely up to you.
What has helped you keep notes on the tracks, drivers, teams?
So I am very much old school, and there's a real pressure when you're commentating to feel like you need to know everything. And actually, a lot of the information that you collate, you don't use. So if you spend too much time trying to it's an endless book, right? There's no front cover, there's no back cover when it comes to information, especially on the internet. So if you spend too much time in that space, you'll sink. So I always say, if you're not sure, find 3 things from each driver or each team or whatever it is, and know those 3 things really, really well. So for me, I'm old school. I will write down all my information. I might look young, but I'm really rubbish with computers. So I'd love to have it all mapped out on spreadsheets and everything else. But I love to get an entry list, and I love to write, sort of either print it out on A3 or A4. But I love to write 2 or 3 things down for each driver. And I think statistics and facts are really important. You can't commentate just on facts, but I love bringing in really random bits of information, especially if Scott Dixon, for example, at St. Petersburg, he's the most celebrated IndyCar driver of all time, maybe the greatest of all time, and he's never won around the streets of St. Petersburg. So I love sort of random snippets of information and facts like that.
What has inspired you to become a commentator?
Yeah, so for me, and I'll be totally truthful, my journey started on the track in the car with a steering wheel. So I've swapped the steering wheel for a microphone, and that was a journey. The catalyst for that was me breaking my back. And when I broke my back, I couldn't return back to the car. My career stalled. I didn't have the money, that kind of thing. And TV was very much a lifeline, but it wasn't a stepping stone that I turned to immediately, because I was actually really hurting not being able to return to the cockpit. It was too raw. It was too sort of, hurtful, if you like. Seeing my friends do the one thing that I couldn't now do was really hard. But I worked out very quickly that motorsport was in me, that my friends were in this space, that everything that makes me tick in life is motorsport. And TV has a performer element to it, just like driving does. So when you're racing, you have sleepless nights before big events, you get really nervous, you get that adrenaline, you get tight, you perform well sometimes, you perform well not so well other times. And TV's like that. TV gives you that performer element. The night before the Indy 500, I'm nervous, really nervous, and then you don't know what's going to happen, and it's chaotic. And when the director's going 10, 9, 8, and you're getting that live count, it's like the lights coming on when you're in the car. So TV was something that I'm forever grateful for that opportunity, because I didn't know it at the time, but it's really now become who I am. I forget about the fact that I used to race cars. I look at myself now as somebody that has always been a professional broadcaster, and that's been my space and my forte.
How do you improve yourself as a commentator?
Yeah, so I'm a big advocate of not focusing on the perfect, and that's a journey that I've been through, because I felt that when I focused on being perfect, I ended up being disappointed all the time, and I was doing this wonderful thing and not enjoying it. And like I said at the top of the interview, it's really important that you get your passion and your enjoyment across. And if you're too busy focusing on what's perfect and beating yourself up if you make mistakes, you sort of don't have that. You don't have that experience. You tighten up. You don't show that you're loving it, because actually you're worrying about making the next mistake. So I always say, when you're looking at improvements, make the one person you want to impress the most yourself. Because if you ask 10 different people how they thought you performed, they'll give you 10 different opinions. And then you're like, well, how do I do this? How do I do that? It's really important to have trusted voices and trusted people. And I had a mentor called Simon Reed, who is very well known in the industry, does all of the tennis for the BBC and that kind of stuff. Brother Oliver Reed, a famous actor, and he took me under his wing and helped guide me. But I watch things back and I take little snippets of information from other people, and then I try and do it my way. Because if you're not true to yourself, if you're trying to copy someone else, you'll only ever be a second-rate version of them. Whereas, Murray Walker's so unique. We celebrate Murray Walker. He did it his way. And it's so important to be the best version of Tom Gaymor, as opposed to the second-rate version of copying another commentator, if that makes sense. Easy trap to fall into that. So, be super proud of how you do it. Be super confident about finding your own way, and be the best version of yourself.
What does a race day look like for you?
Yeah, so race day for me, I always say when we're so race day for me is not just race day. It's on the Monday of that race week, really, I start to be across absolutely everything. So I've done my prep. I printed out my my entry list, and I've got different other bits of paper that I will start to add to. So I write out my skeleton information on the Monday, and then I'll start to be across, a bit like revision notes, really, absolutely every story. But I'll also be getting voice notes from the drivers, WhatsApping them, that kind of stuff, just to try and get snippets of information that I can build into sort of my information pool. And that's quite intense. So I always say it's like doing an exam at the end of the week. So you're doing your revision all the way through the week, and so you never switch off, because you're constantly looking at things, checking things, social media as well, just picking up on what I would say are the undercurrent in terms of the storylines going in. So we know, the major storylines and that kind of stuff, but who's had food poisoning, who's dropped a bowling ball on their foot on the Wednesday night, all of the sort of really innocuous things that actually play a part in the weekend. So getting all those ingredients and putting them in the pot on my entry list. And so it's like a crescendo that builds up. And actually, race day is very straightforward, because the prep's done. You got to trust the prep. You got to just make sure that you sleep well, that you eat well, that little things like planning when I'm going to eat meals, what I'm going to eat, that kind of stuff, making sure that I'm not tired and fatigued and low on energy, and that side of things. So all the information's in my head. I can just plan my day and try and enjoy it as much as everyone else.
What's something you learned from the sport that's helping you outside of it?
So I think for me, it's very much, that's a really good question. I've really enjoyed, especially with the IndyCar, the community aspect. So trying to be a fan as well as an expert working on the sport. So social media in today's day and age can be a really challenging space. And we have a wonderful community when it comes to IndyCar, for example. So just trying to be more mindful about the language we use on social media, how we treat people, being inclusive, that kind of thing. I'm not saying I wasn't all of those things, but I come under fire occasionally. I get people who are quite forthwith with their opinions and a bit of hate and stuff like that. So, from a commentary perspective, the commentating is one thing, but working in 2025 in a in a public space means that you have to be across social media, and that side of things for me, I've taken into everyday life. So important to be kind and to recognize that we don't know what people are going through or where they are in their life and that kind of thing. So so I think just off the top of my head, that's the sort of main answer for me.
What is your favorite track?
Yeah, good question. I'm definitely going US. I mean, I always said from a driving perspective, it's Pau. I loved the street track in France. I got my first race win there in Formula Renault, and I love Pau, and I love that part of France. But from a broadcasting perspective, it's definitely some of the American tracks like Mid-Ohio, Road America. There's just something very magical and raw about those places. They're not perfect, they're not giant car parks with tarmac runoff. They're old school. They're challenging. If you make a mistake, it's going to punish you. There's just something very, very special about those places. So I'll definitely go Mid-Ohio or Road America.
What's your favorite markup that you've done during your time as a commentator?
My favorite what, sorry?
Markups are like if you've accidentally called the driver by the wrong name.
Muck up, yeah. So yeah, I've done one or two that we probably can't broadcast. So someone messaged in on Sky IndyCar with a false name, a bit like The Simpsons. So that was a bit rude. So I read out that name without realizing that it had rude connotations to it. So I don't know if you ever watched The Simpsons, and they ring up what's his name in the bar, Mo in the bar, and he always says something outrageous. So I've done that once or twice. But yeah, I would definitely say that was probably right up there. And the producer in my ear was very kind and calm and said, "Tom, just double check those names before you read them out, please." I won't say what it was, but the surname was spelled MEHOFF. So yeah, moving swiftly on. Yeah. Well, I used to be teammates with Danica Patrick, and I worked with Jamie Chadwick when she was over here doing GB3, and it's I know Catherine Legg very, very well, so we could do a talk about that one day.
Yeah.
So we're going to get ready to start a fast lap of this Hungaroring circuit. Let's use the phrase fast lightly, as this is not effectively my day job, as you know. So down the main straightaway, DRS will be open. The main overtaking spot is turn 1 on this Hungaroring circuit. Hard on the brakes and down into second gear. Exit and entry, very important. Very easy to make a mistake and run wide there, which will compromise you down in to this off-camber left-hander. Another overtaking opportunity should the car in front make a mistake at turn 1. Now it's uphill to the fast turn 4. Blind entry here, and very important to be as committed as possible on a fast lap. Use all the exit and then down to third gear. Don't lose the rear end. V that corner, hard on the throttle, down to the chicane. And I've slightly outbraked myself. Kept it going. That won't count, but nevertheless, into turn 7 and 8 here. Up the gearbox. This will be fourth gear and very, very fast. Be sure not to run too wide because you will lose grip on the exit curves. Hard on the brakes, down to second gear. Building the throttle now. Up to the penultimate turn. Again, second gear, a long left-hander. And it's important not to compromise yourself on the exit as you prepare for this never-ending right-hander onto the start and finish straight. Very hard on the left front tyre. Build the throttle not too early onto the exit curb. Hit the limiter, sixth gear, and down to turn 1 to start another lap. Hard on the brakes. Second gear. Build the throttle. Make sure that we do not miss our braking spot and make a mistake there, otherwise we will be under pressure in the race. Down in to this off camber left-hander, very tricky, easy again to miss your braking spot. Short shift up to fourth, then we're up to the very fast turn 4, fourth gear. Find the entries, build the throttle, don't run wide on the exit, and then we V this corner. Have to really work the car through here, up to where we made a mistake last time around. Very easy to miss your braking spot. Stay off the sausage curb, that'll really destabilize the car. Third gear now for this 7 and 8 sequence. Then we build the throttle. Fourth gear, I've run slightly wide on the entry, which means I've slowed all the way down to this right-hander. Second gear, up to fourth, then back to second. I V'd that nicely, built a bit too much throttle. Now it's an eternity as you pick up the throttle on to the start and finish straight. And that is 2 laps of the